Emily stood in the dim light of her new, tiny apartment, the rain tapping a steady rhythm against the windows. Outside, the gray Pacific Northwest sky mirrored her state of mind, heavy, clouded, unable to see what lay beyond. She wrapped her arms around herself, her breath misting the glass as she leaned closer, trying to steady the whirlwind inside her head. It had been 3 months since she left Sarah, but the memories clung to her like the damp air that seeped through the window frames. She could still feel the weight of Sarah's hand on her wrist, the bruises hidden beneath long sleeves that summer. At night, the darkness closed in, replaying those last, desperate moments over and over in her mind. She had fled from Sarah, yet the fear followed her, a shadow she couldn't shake. Her phone buzzed on the counter, dragging her back into the present. It was Lena, the one friend who had stayed by her side through everything. The message read, "Just checking in. Need anything?" Emily hesitated before typing back, "I'm okay." Thanks, she wanted to add more, to tell Lena about the nightmares and the panic attacks, but the words refused to form. Instead, she set her phone down and let her mind drift back to the beginning, back to the night she met Sarah at a poetry reading. They had met in a small cafe, surrounded by the clatter of cups and the soft murmur of voices. Emily had noticed Sarah immediately, her easy smile, the way she gestured animatedly as she spoke about art. When Sarah approached her afterward, inviting her to a late-night coffee, Emily had felt a thrill she hadn't felt in years. They talked for hours, their words weaving together like the verses of a poem, and when Sarah kissed her outside under the neon glow of the cafe's sign, Emily felt like she had found something she'd been searching for all her life. For the first few months, their love was a whirlwind. They explored the city together, stayed up late dreaming about the future, and spent long afternoons in bed, tangled up in each other. Sarah made Emily feel seen, cherished, and for a while, Emily let herself believe that she had finally found a safe place to land. But even then, there were warning signs, little things she ignored because she was too swept up in the rush of new love. Sarah would joke about Emily's friends, asking why she needed anyone else when she had her. She'd get jealous when Emily talked to other women, but always brushed it off with a laugh. "I'm just crazy about you," she'd say, pulling Emily close, and Emily would brush away the small knot of unease in her stomach. One evening, after a dinner with friends, Emily noticed a change in Sarah's demeanor. As soon as they were home, Sarah's smile faded, replaced by a sharpness in her gaze that made Emily's skin prickle. "Why did you have to flirt with that bartender?" Sarah asked, her tone dangerously calm. "I saw the way you were smiling at her." Emily blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "I wasn't flirting, Sarah. She was just being friendly." Sarah's jaw tightened, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "Don't lie to me, Emily. I know what I saw." Emily tried to reason with her, but Sarah's anger only grew, a quiet, simmering rage that left Emily feeling like she was walking on a tightrope, afraid of tipping into the void below. That night, Sarah's touch was rougher, more insistent. She pressed Emily down onto the bed, her hands gripping too tightly, her kisses bruising instead of comforting. Emily froze, her body going rigid beneath Sarah's weight, but she said nothing. She convinced herself that it was just a moment of jealousy, a misunderstanding. She told herself that Sarah didn't mean to hurt her. But the incident left a crack in their relationship, a crack that widened with each passing day. The jealousy became more frequent, the accusations more cutting. Sarah began to control Emily's every move, monitoring her phone, insisting she share her location whenever she left the house. And Emily, desperate to keep the peace, gave in to each demand, believing that if she just loved Sarah enough, things would go back to the way they were. That night, when Sarah finally fell asleep, Emily slipped out of bed and quietly packed a small bag. She moved carefully, terrified that the creak of a floorboard or the sound of the zipper would wake Sarah. Her hands trembled as she stuffed clothes into the bag, each breath feeling like a countdown. Emily tried to defend herself, her voice shaking with frustration. "You're overreacting, Sarah. I was just catching up with people. Why do you always do this?" Sarah's expression darkened, and she took a step closer, her body looming over Emily's. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Her voice was low, a dangerous whisper that sent a chill down Emily's spine. "You think I don't see what you're doing?" Before Emily could respond, Sarah grabbed her wrist, yanking her toward the bedroom. Panic flared in Emily's chest as she tried to pull away, but Sarah was stronger, her grip like iron. She forced Emily onto the bed, her weight pressing down, her hands moving with a roughness that made Emily's skin crawl. Emily struggled, her voice barely more than a gasp, but Sarah ignored her breath hot against Emily's ear as she muttered, "You need to learn to stop fighting me." When it was over, Sarah rolled away, as if nothing had happened. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. "I'm sorry, babe," she murmured, her voice soft again. "You know I just get a little crazy sometimes. But it's only because I love you so much." Emily lay frozen, her mind reeling, her body aching. She turned her face away, staring at the shadows on the wall, as Sarah's words echoed in her ears. "Because I love you," the words twisted in her mind, warping into something ugly, something that felt like a lie. For the first time, she wondered if this was what love was supposed to feel like. In the weeks following that night, something inside Emily shifted. She started staying home more, cutting back on her shifts at the bookstore where she had worked for years. She told herself it was easier this way, no more misunderstandings, no more accusations. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was hiding from Sarah and from herself. Every time her phone rang, she flinched, half expecting another demand from Sarah. Her social circle, once vibrant and filled with friends, shrank to a few strained text messages with Lena. She thought about telling Lena the truth about the way Sarah's love had turned into something that left her feeling hollow and small, but the words died in her throat each time she tried. One afternoon, Lena called while Emily was making tea. She could hear the concern in her friend's voice, could feel the warmth of their years of friendship through the phone. "Hey, I haven't seen you in ages, Em. Want to grab lunch tomorrow?" Emily bit her lip, staring at the calendar on the wall where Sarah's work schedule was meticulously marked. She knew that Sarah would ask questions, would demand to know why she needed to see Lena when they could just spend time together. I can't, Lena. Maybe some other time." Lena paused, and Emily could almost hear her frown. "Emily, are you okay? It's like you've disappeared." Emily forced a laugh, trying to keep her voice light. "I'm fine, really. Just busy, work and stuff." After they hung up, Emily leaned against the kitchen counter, blinking back tears. She wanted to reach out, to let Lena see the cracks that ran through her life, but a voice in her head, Sarah's voice, kept telling her that no one would understand. That if she told the truth, she'd only end up more alone. And so she kept her silence. She told herself that things would get better, that Sarah's temper would pass, that the apologies would start to outweigh the pain. But the nights grew darker, filled with arguments that left Emily feeling like she was suffocating. The love that had once felt like a warm blanket now felt like a chain, heavy and unyielding. The final straw came on a cold night in November. They had been sitting at the dinner table, Sarah picking at her food while Emily tried to make small talk. But Sarah's mood was dark, her gaze flickering with the kind of anger that made Emily's stomach twist with dread. Without looking up, Sarah said, I don't think you'd last a day without me. You're too weak, too dependent. You don't have anyone else, Em." The words hit Emily like a slap, but this time something in her snapped. She looked across the table at Sarah, at the person she had once believed would be her forever, and saw the truth. This wasn't love. This wasn't what she deserved. And maybe Sarah was right. Maybe she didn't have anyone else. But she had herself. And for the first time, that felt like it might be enough. The night it all changed. They had been out at a friend's birthday party. Emily had laughed a little too loudly, caught up in the warmth of old friends, and she could feel Sarah's eyes on her the entire time. When they got home, the door barely closed behind them before Sarah's accusations started. "You were practically throwing yourself at her, Emily. Do you even care about us anymore?" She stood at the door, glancing back one last time at the bedroom where Sarah slept. For a moment, doubt clawed at her. Maybe she should stay. Maybe she was overreacting. But then she thought of all the nights she had spent lying awake, afraid of the person beside her, and her resolve hardened. She stepped out into the cold night, closing the door quietly behind her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she made her way down the stairs and out into the empty street. Her breath came in short gasps as she reached her car, fumbling with the keys before finally slipping inside. She turned the engine on and drove, the streetlights blurring into streaks of gold against the dark. She drove for hours, not knowing where she was going, just knowing that she needed to get away. By the time she finally pulled into a cheap motel on the edge of town, her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely check in. She collapsed onto the scratchy bedspread, feeling the weight of everything crash down around her. She cried herself to sleep that night, but when morning came, she felt a small, fragile sense of relief. She was free from Sarah's control, free from the prison of her own fear. She didn't know what would come next, but for the first time she believed that there might be a future worth fighting for. The days that followed were a blur of uncertainty and fear. Emily stayed at the motel for a week, too scared to reach out to anyone. She avoided her phone, dreading the thought of Sarah's calls, and spent most of her time staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering how she had let things get so bad. Eventually, she reached out to Lena, the one person she thought might still care. She dialed Lena's number with trembling fingers, holding her breath as it rang. When Lena picked up, her voice was filled with confusion and concern. "Emily, where are you? Are you okay? Are you okay?" Emily's voice broke as she replied, I left her, Lena. I don't know what to do." There was a pause on the other end, and then Lena's voice softened. "Come stay with me. You don't have to go through this alone." A few days later, Emily found herself at the local LGBTQ center, standing outside the door with a flyer in her hand. The words support group stared back at her, and she wondered if she really belonged in a place like this. But Lena had insisted that she try, and so she pushed open the door, stepping into the warmth of the center. The support group met in a small, cozy room at the back of the building. Emily sat in a circle of strangers, her hands twisting in her lap as she listened to the stories of other survivors. Most of them spoke about abusive husbands or boyfriends, and Emily felt a pang of doubt. What if her story didn't count? What if no one believed that a woman could hurt another woman like that? When it was her turn to speak, Emily's voice faltered. She looked around the circle at the faces watching her, and the words she had planned to say crumbled. I'm just here to listen," she murmured, staring down at the floor. The group leader gave her a sympathetic smile, but Emily could see the confusion in her eyes. After the meeting, a woman with curly hair and kind eyes approached her. She introduced herself as Mia, a counselor at the center. "You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready," Mia said gently. "But if you ever want to, I'm here." Emily hesitated, then took the card Mia offered her. She clutched it in her pocket all the way home, wondering if maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who would understand. Here's the continuation of the story, diving deeper into Emily's therapy sessions with Mia, her struggles with the legal system, and the path she begins to carve toward healing. Emily sat across from Mia in the small, cozy office at the LGBTQ center, the hum of a space heater filling the quiet space. It was her third session with Mia, and each time, Emily found it a little easier to speak. Today, though, her words felt heavy, like stones lodged in her chest. "It's strange," Emily said, staring down at her hands as they twisted in her lap. "I keep thinking, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I overreacted." Mia leaned forward, her expression calm but attentive. "It's normal to feel that way, Emily. Abusers often make their victims feel like they're the ones who are at fault. But the fact that you're doubting yourself doesn't mean what happened wasn't real." Emily nodded, but the doubt still gnawed at her. She had been raised to believe that love meant sacrifice, that relationships took work. But how much work was too much? She couldn't shake the memory of Sarah's apologies, the way she would cry after hurting her, swearing that she didn't mean to, that she just loved Emily so much she couldn't help herself. Mia seemed to read the conflict in Emily's expression. "Do you remember when you first met Sarah? How did she make you feel?" Emily closed her eyes, remembering those early days. The warmth of Sarah's laughter, the way she made Emily feel like she was the center of the universe. She made me feel special, like I was the only person in the world who mattered. "And when did that change?" Mia asked gently. Emily swallowed hard, forcing herself to face the truth she had buried for so long. "I think it changed when she started needing me to prove it. When she started saying that if I really loved her, I'd cut off my friends, spend more time with her. And then when that wasn't enough, she said that I needed to show her how much I trusted her, even when her voice broke, and she felt tears burning in her eyes. Mia reached out, offering a box of tissues without a word. Emily took one, dabbing at her face, hating the way her hands trembled. "She made me feel like it was my fault, like I was the one who was hurting her by trying to leave." Mia nodded, her expression sympathetic. Abusers often manipulate their partners into feeling responsible for their actions. It's a way to maintain control. But Emily, none of this was your fault. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. Emily wanted to believe Mia's words, but the guilt still lingered like a shadow in her mind. Still, she left the session feeling a little lighter, a little more certain that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as broken as she thought.